Oh, what a feeling. It's more to a story when you count up who you dealing with. Losing's not an option, a subject or a predicate. They say the sky's the limit. Yes, I'm busting through the ceiling. Miles to Mogul. I do you one that's better, rather show you than I told you. Yeah, and everybody swear they know you until you go Super Saiyan on them. Goku. Everybody swear they know you. Everybody swear they know you. Now. Everybody swear they know you. Everybody swear they know you. Now.
So welcome to Miles to Mogul. Today in the studio I have someone that I met around the time I moved back to Austin, which was like 2016, and that was 7 years ago.
I knew it. Time is flying too fast.
Time is flying fast. And we actually went on a camping trip the first day that we met. And we ended up sleeping in a tent together that night. Okay, nothing like that, but
it was definitely Texas summer too. And so that was uncomfortable. I felt like this is boot camp all over again.
It is. And I remember, I think you said something like that. So it's crazy to meet somebody and then be like, okay, we're going on a camping trip because we were with our mutual friends, so we're all there together. It was so much fun. Shout out to Kevin Knight of Urban Camp Weekend who puts those dope events together. And, you know, Black people do camp. Yeah, I know some people don't think that, but we do camp. But let's get into it. I have Army veteran, nonprofit director, master public speaker, healer, optimist, and vibrant light, Maria Brown-Spence.
Oh, thank you. So glad to be here. And let me go ahead and update my social media bio because I like that.
I'm glad you like it. I just feel like, first of all, I'm happy that you're here, but I feel like every time that I see you, I'm always greeted by a warm smile and a big hug and like this beautiful light of just like contagious, warm, vibrant energy. You. And it's crazy because you actually do heal people for a living. Like that's part of what you do. And I think it's just such a beautiful thing. Do people ever tell you that you have this energy that people just kind of are just drawn into?
Yes, ever since I was little. My grandmother would say I never met a stranger, talked to everyone. I was always very empathetic of everyone. My nickname in school was Gums because I do have big gums, but I was always smiling. And so that was something that was always important to me, was like to bring joy to everything. So yeah, but gums.
I love that. I mean, people can only see your gums if you're smiling, so you were happy. That's all that matters, right? How do you maintain your energy and how do you protect it? Because in a world of people being attracted to that energy, there's a responsibility that comes along with like protecting it for yourself, right?
I've definitely gotten better. I did not protect it for a long time. And then I saw that was only causing me higher levels of anxiety. I was feeling real staticky. I didn't have clarity. I said, something's got to shift. Something's got to change. I always talk about setting boundaries, but I wasn't doing that with myself. And so for me, I love the outdoors. Shout out to camping again. So I always try to start my day with like a morning walk or at least get outside and walk. And during the pandemic, that was really difficult because we were trapped. We didn't know where we could go. But I always said, well, I'm going to get out here in the morning and I'm going to walk. And I'm going to get out in the evening and I'm going to walk. And I do the same thing. Working remote for the last 4 years has also taught me those boundaries too, because I don't go outside as much. And so you don't have to worry about all the energy being taken when you stay inside as well.
How do you recharge? Like, I know you say you go outside, but do you have like time that you need to have alone in order to recharge? Yes. Or is this with other people?
Even as an extrovert, like I found I need more time to recharge by myself to also see what my body needs or what, you know, emotion I'm feeling truly, because when you're out around a lot of people too, sometimes you pick up their frequencies and you can't resonate with your own self. But I do feel like girlfriends are super necessary. Get around my girls and we can have our bonnets on. We sitting on the couch drinking wine. Like that is a recharge for me because I feel like I can be my authentic self. I don't have to wear my corporate hat and sit up straight and say all of the things and pronounce all the things correctly. I could just be me with my girls. And so I do advocate for real, true girlfriend friendships. I know a lot of people will have their questions about that and say it's hard to have girlfriends, but I can't live without my girls.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when you have a certain level of energy or when you're on a high frequency, you're going to attract the right girlfriends. I think a lot of people that say like, oh, I'm suspect about girlfriends, or I'm suspect about having friends, or I don't trust people, they have some internal work to do.
Yeah.
They're still working through a lot of stuff. What role do you feel energy plays when it comes to human interactions and relationships?
Everything. I think it goes back to when you have that feeling in yourself, like, something don't feel right about this person or this situation, and we say, oh, it could be nothing. I always say tune into that. Whatever your first instinct is, your first gut feeling, I understand too now, like, I don't want to hug everybody because everybody.
Okay, give me a high five on that because I'm not a hugger.
Everybody's energy, I'll hug someone like, oh, wait a minute,
Right.
A little bit of static, and it's the same thing, right? You take your clothes out the dryer, you may not have enough bounce sheets in there, and you hug someone, it's like, whoa, that was a lot. So you have sparks of good energy, but then you have those sparks of energy like, I need to weigh this out a little bit. So I think it does play into everything that you do. I'm really big on like the energy I come into a room, because sometimes you only have one impression. And I don't want to have that day where and you have it, but I try my best to say, maybe someone is having a day that's not as good as mine, and me just smiling or bringing them into that good energy could really change their day. So I think it plays into everything. Like, just pay attention to your gut feeling, and also see how people perceive you, or what perception you have of that person, because like you said, a lot of times we mirror, right? And it's kind of like, well, she felt standoffish. But instead of saying she felt standoffish, stepping back and saying, well, why do I feel that way? Or was there something that she picked up from me that maybe wanted her to stand back a little bit more? So it's always not the other person either. Sometimes we got to dig deep and see what we're presenting.
You said so much and all of that. I want all of it. But no, you're right. I mean, early on, I was not, still, I'm not a hugger like that. I only hug people that I feel like have positive energy. So when I first meet somebody, a lot of times I'm just like, hi.
Yeah.
I just kind of try to keep it cute like that.
Boundaries.
But I'm lucky because every time I see you, you hug me. So I must have great energy, everyone.
Yes,
I have great energy right here. But yes. But no, it's a big thing, because I didn't realize at a young age why I wasn't a hugger. I didn't get it until I got older. I was like, oh my gosh, you've been protecting yourself. Yeah. Like the knower in me has been protecting myself this entire time. Yeah. And it's kind of like my navigation system. It's like, why does that person feel strange? Like you said earlier. Or why do I not necessarily like her and she hasn't said anything to me, or him? Yeah. You know, and it's like, that's your soul telling you that this person is not energetically aligned with you. Yeah. So you might just need to step away. And it's okay. Sometimes I don't have to have a reason why I don't want to be in someone's presence. I can simply say, we don't have, our energy is not aligned, and that's okay. Yeah. We're not energetically compatible.
And like you said, from a young age, so that also shows too that you had that discernment and you tapped into that very early. For me, like, I just let my heart wide open, and I was always like, well, why did somebody do that to me, or what? Because I wasn't vetting the situations, I wasn't setting those boundaries, and then when it would happen, I would get frustrated and say, why does this keep happening to me? Until I said, I have to change my mindset to say, nope, I'm not going to let this happen to myself anymore. I'm going to take that power back as well, but I can still be my bright, bubbly self. It doesn't mean I have to fully lock up, but I think everyone has to do what's best for them, because the first rule of life is self-preservation. And if you're understanding energy very early on as well, there's like, no, I can't, because it's going to drain me, and I have too much brightness that I have to give to the world, and you can't tap into that right now.
You're a light.
Yeah.
And I always say this, when you're on a plane, they tell you the game on the plane. They say, put your air mask on first before you assist others.
And I'm going to do that.
I'm going to do that all day. I'm going to protect this energy before I try to assist you with it. And I have to realize when I'm tapped out, I just do. I also want to go back to something that you said. You said sometimes we need to evaluate ourselves, because we're quick to point at the other person. Like, oh, why are they acting like that? Is it because I'm acting like that? What's the deal? Like, what's going on? And I always say, sometimes when I, have these conversations or have interactions with people, and they're like, are you mad at me? Or do you not like me? Or what is going on? Or they might say something that I don't like. And I start asking people, well, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
You're saying that me doing what I'm doing is making you uncomfortable. I think that you need to dig a little bit deeper and see, why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
Because it's not always you. It's not always me. It could be you. needing to, it's not, I'm just saying, like, if you're in a situation and you're pointing at someone else, do some internal work, like you said.
Exactly. And I think we'll see that in different phases in our life, depending on what we're going through, right? So if we are in a space of isolation and we don't want to connect the same way, then someone that is like, okay, hi. And then you're like, well, why didn't she say hi to me, like, joyfully? Because you're already going in with that intention. So I think too, like, intention is another part of energy, right? Like, what energy do I want to bring into the space? What intention do I have for this person? And I am a Gemini, so the duality of that as well. Yes, so you already know, like, sometimes that little twin on your shoulder will say, I don't know this space yet, so let me go ahead and put my little wall down, then I'll peep the scene. And then when that shift changes, you might hear people say, oh, wow, like, you're so much fun. Like, I didn't know what to expect.
Oh my gosh, it's like 4 people here right now. I don't know if you guys know, we're both Gemini. So there's like, there's 4 people. And I have the same thing. I'm the same way. Yeah. If I go into a new space, I have to observe first. And then if I feel like I'm safe and I feel like I can be my authentic self and I'm not going to feel weird energy around me, then that is when you get the real me.
And I'm always watching. So even though I'm very talkative, I'm outgoing, I'm always hearing I'm like directional ears. Like, I heard you over here and I heard that.
You over here.
And so sometimes too, that comes in with the energy. Like, I want to have sometimes more like direct, intentional conversations with you, but my brain is literally like,
everywhere.
Okay, what is going on? And so I think that too, you have to tell someone like, excuse me, I am paying attention to you. And I've tried very hard to do that because I do know, like, shout out to all those with ADHD, clinically diagnosed, not just Instagram diagnosed.
What is Instagram diagnosed?
Now we know that we have everyone on Instagram that thinks they have a medical degree.
Oh my goodness.
They the best business owner in the world, and they can sell you this business plan and you're going to make $10 million in 30 days.
Somebody get her out of here.
But to also know yourself too, right? That we talk about this world now of DEI, right? But it really goes back to that, to understanding sometimes people, one, their mind might think a little bit differently. Two, like, if you've been in that trauma state and you've had to protect yourself, sometimes there are walls that you have up differently than someone that didn't have to do that or had a more soft life, right? And so I think that goes into, like, getting to know that person a little bit more before you jump into assumptions. But again, that discernment is what helps us even see if we want to move forward with the conversation, because I'm an extrovert and I've made a lot of introverted friends that were like, I probably never would have picked you as a friend, but here we are. We've been friends for 15 years. I'm like, yeah, because sometimes you don't know what you need until you see it, and vice versa. Like, sometimes I need that balance for my introverted friends to say, hey, let's just calm down. Let's just think about it. And sometimes my friend needs to hear, no, you just go for it and speak to that person and do the thing. So I think it also comes with finding balance within your friendship circles and those around you as well.
But I feel like everything that we're saying here, it's based on you. It starts with you. It starts inside of you. Like, everything that's inside of you is going to be reflected back right at you.
100%.
So whatever you put out, you're going to get it right on back. What role do you feel like energy plays in healing?
It's the same thing when you think about it, right? So if you're around a lot of energy that feels staticky, you're going to see your emotions decline. You're going to feel like, I'm a little more anxious because you're not settled in the room. I think it goes back to when you walk into a space, right? You could feel like, oh, wow, this feels light and airy if you've been to someone's home or apartment. And part of my situation, like, I did have someone that went through a very challenging time with cancer, and my apartment always felt heavy. Like, there was a heavy air because it was a very tough time, and that energy from him was still there. And I would have friends that came into that space to say, it feels a little stuffy in here. It's like, I know. I would try to open the windows and change the energy. So energy is there. It's like if you ran track, right, you have that momentum. That's your energy pushing you through. Or say, come on, use that extra energy from the bottom. Like, it's within our bodies. It's in spaces. Like, there's no getting around that. And I think that's where it comes into, like, settling your mind so you can really tap into it and the understanding of it.
When I think about someone going through something, I feel like it's all about the story that we tell ourselves too. Kind of based on what you were just talking about. What's the biggest thing you think people should focus on when they are trying to heal? whether it be like a breakup or, you know, like losing a loved one or a relationship.
Yourself. Focus on, again, that intention of what your body needs and really tuning in. I think you have to exit the noise. And so for me, self-isolation, and I say that in a way that's not like just me in a corner hidden away, but not hearing outside experiences either, like people telling me, well, this is what you need to do. Okay, I'm going to take that into consideration, but then that may not work for my situation. So I would definitely say, one, sit with yourself for a little bit, take a moment to think, because when we are in that trauma mindset or the experience just happened, our emotions are really high. So sometimes we don't want to make an immediate change or immediate shift. We just need to take that time and feel. Through my healing journey, it was finding healing after loss, right? And so I've been a caregiver twice. I say this story all the time to two of my loved ones that passed from cancer. And I didn't know what I needed for a very long time because I wasn't ready to do the healing and didn't even know where to start. Part of that was, well, if I just drank a lot, I'm not going to feel it anyway. And then say, why do I still feel like this 4 years later? It's because I wasn't doing anything different to shift. And I wasn't taking the time out to say, it's going to get ugly and you have to feel it. And so once I allowed myself to feel it, I was like, oh, this is the healing that they talk about. This is not pretty.
No, it's not.
I'm reevaluating, oh my gosh, I should have never said that to that person. Oh, why did I do that to myself? Why did I do that to them? And so then you go into this cycle almost of all the things that you could have done, all the things that you should have done, what you could have changed, what you didn't do. And you just process and say, I have to forgive myself for those things because I was dealing the best I could. I was just trying to survive. And from there, those emotions that you didn't like, identify how you change that behavior or that mindset shift. So for me, like when I'm very stressed, I'm very snappy. It's like she's not herself when she's hungry. She needs a little Snickers bar. That's me. Like I can tell when my emotions are off, when I haven't had enough sleep, when I do need to eat, when it's a high stress time. I just say, right now is not a good time. I'm just going to go ahead and not come out, or I'm going to sit in my room until I can get back settled. And so sometimes you have to do the healing to protect those other relationships as well, but also it's not your responsibility to change someone's mindset of how they viewed you either. So I know that was a lot.
That was great.
But it's like there's not one path for healing essentially, and it does take a long time. And how they always say it gets uglier before it gets better. That's how healing is. Like you have to do that work to see what you even need to move forward.
Yeah, being a human to me, I feel like it requires a lot of self-awareness. Just in general. Yeah. Just like when you were talking, you were saying like, you know, when I am feeling a certain type of way emotionally, I'm snappy or I'm this or I'm that. Some people don't even know that about themselves. They just think, oh, I'm the easiest person to get along with. No. Who me? Not so hard to get along with. I had to learn myself. Like if I'm mad, upset, or frustrated, or like you said, hungry, then I don't need to be making any decisions during the time, any major decisions during that time. Because if I do, I'll go back and look back at it when I'm, you know, back to my happy, vibrant self again. And I'm like, that wasn't the right decision. I shouldn't have, like you said, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have did that. Like I could have handled that like an adult. Yeah. So if you do get into those situations like you have in the past, what do you do? Like, how do you come back and forgive yourself, or maybe, you know, come back to the person that maybe you said something to that wasn't quite right? Do you acknowledge it?
I do.
Have the conversation? And what does that look like for you?
I think you have to do that too when you're ready, because people act like, I don't know why I did that. And a lot of times you do, but you're not ready to take accountability for it. So that one, accountability, like that's the biggest thing to move forward. And so many people will respect you for that, even if they forgive you and never want to be with you. And that happens sometimes. You might hurt people along the healing journey as well and go through this healed state, or what you feel is the best healed state of you because you're never fully healed, and say, well, I apologized and look at me. I'm so much better. And I don't do those things you didn't like. But that person still remembers you in that space because they haven't done the work for themselves to forgive how they let you treat them.
I hope y'all heard that. Maria, can you say it louder for the people in the back?
They can't forgive themselves for how you made them feel.
Whew.
After we do the healing work, it's like you think of like war for real, like the casualties of war that come from it. And you hear that, and it happens through the healing journey as well, that there will be people that you'll never connect with again. And I've had those conversations to say, I'm sorry that I was not the best person when I was in this state of trauma or trying to figure out what my life looked like. And I appreciate you for that, but I'm good. And we don't have to be friends. But for you saying that, I acknowledge it and I take it. And that's all you can do. And I think sometimes we do force that after we've done the work to say, well, we're good now. I'm back. It just may not be that season for that person. And maybe that person will come back around, or maybe that situation, but that's part of the healing journey. Just say, okay, well, that was that chapter, that was that season, that was that life experience. Now I have to move forward, but I at least let them know how I felt.
Sometimes too, when I have moments like that in life, as much as it hurts to like lose somebody that you care about, even if they're physically still here and they're just mad at you because, you know, whatever the thing is, I'm like, life is short, one. Two, that might have been, not might have been, that was a lesson for you so that you could elevate.
Yeah.
That person might not learn the lesson, and it might not have been their lesson to learn at that time, but that was your lesson.
Yeah.
So I see every single relationship, situation, conversation, it's like life class. Like I'm learning something all the time.
And sometimes you won't see the lesson immediately. Sometimes it'll take years down the road. And I always say that with what I experienced with my grandmother, losing her to cancer, and then my boyfriend at the time was diagnosed with cancer and would lose him. What I experienced with my grandmother was very different than his situation. This was an older woman that was diagnosed with cancer and was very, okay, I've had my family, I'm in my 80s, like life is good, I just want to spend what's left with you all. Then I saw another situation like, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? I'm a young man, I'm still trying to live my best life, and all these things happen to me, and now something else is happening to me. And it was cancer, both, but each individual handled that situation very differently. And I learned a lesson from each of those experiences very differently as well. With my grandmother, that was my first loss. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the grief that people talk about? Like, how do you get through this? Like, this is terrible. I'm never going to make it. And that's how it felt for 6 years. I felt like I was in a cycle of grief for 6 years. I was drinking to black out. I was mean to friends. I just had no will. I wasn't doing the things and accomplishing what I knew I could do, what I'm doing now, because I was just trying to survive. I was in that state of, oh my gosh, this happened to me. Why did this happen to me? But it didn't happen to just me. It happened to my grandmother who passed. It happened to our family. It happened to the friends. It happened to all the loved ones, and everyone in those situations handled themselves differently as well. So we all lost someone we loved, the matriarch, but every person experienced grief differently in their own way. Fast forward, boyfriend gets diagnosed with cancer and he passes. I said, oh my goodness, here we go. We back with this grief thing. I said, but what I experienced with my grandmother for those 6 years of grief was ugly. Not going back there. So what do I need to do? I said, okay, people talk about this thing called therapy. Let me see. Went to a couple sessions and it was like dating. I said, I don't like you.
I don't like you. The
this
energy
is okay.
not right.
I don't like it. You want me to tell you what right away? So that too, I had to figure out what worked for me. I got into yoga and meditation. I said, oh, I really like this because I'm a very energetic and mobile person anyway. And I didn't have anywhere to let my energy out. I was just like, oh, this is a lot. All of this emotion is in me. And so that's when I got into a different form of healing. And I said, wow, this feels much better, but I'm not making it a woe is me. This situation happened. I said, I learned something and I helped someone in their last days of life that can help me teach other people about what grief looks like, and understanding that it's okay to feel like you're in this cycle of despair for a while, but you will get through it, but you also have to do the work. And that's what I didn't want to do in the first loss. I didn't want to do the work. There was something weird about staying in the solace of grief. It was easier to make excuses, say, well, my grandmother passed. Your grandmother passed 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. What are you going to do about it now? And it wasn't until I was ready to start that journey that things started to get into place, and I'm still moving through it. So healing is forever, even when we say, oh, I'm healed. Are you really? This is not like you take the Band-Aid off. It's like, oh, got that little scar, and it's all right. Yeah. It is not like that, because then we'd have a lot of bandages on us right now.
Yeah, that's so true. What happens to people when they don't do the work during healing? You kind of talked a little bit about like you were drinking to black out, you were not nice to friends, but what do you think happens to the body when we don't do the work when we need to? We just kind of like let it all back up. It backs up, it backs up, it backs up.
Your body knows everything. again, when my grandmother, through her cancer journey, I would have physical welts on my body, rashes and hives as if I stepped into poison ivy. And it was because I wasn't doing the work. My body was like, ting, 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 ting. No, you need to feel this. Hello, there's something's going on. And every time I try to push it down, I'm like, whoa, what is happening? So my body was letting me know that there's a lot of emotion and a lot of energy in yourself that you're not processing in a positive way. And you're doing a lot of self-harm. And that was the thing that I first acknowledged too, was that I was never like a big drinker. But once my grandmother passed, it was like that became my vice, because I could make excuses. Oh, it was the alcohol. That's why I was belligerent. That's why I cussed you out and did the things. And I can be free and no one's going to say anything, because that was the alcohol talking. It wasn't me. And the people that had to see that version, it was a lot for them to take in as well, to say, oh my gosh, like, again, we have to deal with this. And so you, again, have those people that can identify it. But I think your body tells you by, breaking into rashes, if you are experiencing more of what people would say or coin as anxiety, of just energy that feels like it has nowhere to go, restfulness. If you're getting a lot of headaches, there's a lot of things that your body will tell you. And you've seen from the research too, that when you go in, it's just stress. Your blood pressure will get higher. And then they talk about people dying from heartbreak too with grief, right? Because you literally have all this emotion and it's just stuck in your body. And so that's why I say find something for you to have an outlet. And it doesn't have to be yoga. It doesn't have to be meditation. It could be literally turning your favorite song up in the house and just dancing around. It could say, I love sports, so I'm going to go to the court today and I'm going to put it all on the ground. It could be what you're doing. It could be a podcast. That's where you get to get your energy out and talk with different people as well. But your body will definitely let you know. It's in your skin breaking out. It's in the smile that you can no longer force. It's in your hair thinning. It's in your the texture. It's in your skin being drier. Like, it's everything, because too, it seems like, well, my body's doing all of that. Yeah, your body does do that. But sometimes when you're not paying attention to your body's needs, you don't know, like, maybe I just do need to put a little lotion on today, or maybe I didn't get up to shower in a few days because I've been so depressed. And that is all manifesting within myself, because that in itself is a whole segment. Like, it's hard, when you go through things. We've seen it. Like, you go through a breakup, you're like, I don't want to do my hair. I don't even want to leave the house. And your friends be like, oh no, girl, get that hair together. Let's go out. It's if you lose a job and you're like, gosh, this is tough. And now, I can't, my stomach's upset because I have a job interview. It's because you need that job so bad. So just listen to your body. If you're knowing, different patterns in your sleep, that's also a sign. So we usually have the signs that are showing us that we're about to have a meltdown, or that there's something that we're not processing. But in society, we're just told to keep going, keep going, keep going. And then you usually end up hitting that roadblock, or someone is like, this is not healthy for you, and you have to figure out something else.
It's so sad, because I feel like a lot of people always think about their problems a lot, and they don't realize, like, when they go to the doctor like a year later or 6 months later, they're like, dang, like, the doctor just told me some crazy news. Like, I have cancer. Yeah. I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I have fibroids, which a lot of Black women have. And a lot of that stuff comes from stress. Stress is a big part of it. It's not just stress, but it makes it worse for the body.
I never had high blood pressure or high cholesterol until the pandemic. I went to my my annual physical, and they're like, your blood pressure's high. I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's usually not a thing. It's like, okay, let's monitor it, come back in a little bit. Your blood pressure's still high, and it's cholesterol. And they're like, not little small numbers either. And that's when I knew, like, too, the stress that I didn't feel like, yeah, I'm in the house, I'm not out in a stressful situation, but just the unknowing of the pandemic was causing my body to stress. And also, we talk about the pandemic 50. Like, yeah. I also gained a lot of weight during the pandemic too, which my body was not used to either. And so it was like, it looks good on you, but it's like when you're not used to that state, it does change. And I was like, why does my back hurt differently like this? Oh, my neck. And then I'm like, well, you've been sitting for 13 hours a day. You work remotely now. That's shifted. You can't go out and release with your social circle because those things have changed. And so that again goes back to our bodies telling us what we need or what has shifted, but also allowing to say, hey, this is my new 35-year-old body. I'm cool with it too. But if I want to make a change, I can do that because I can choose what I want to be and how I want to look and the things that I want to do. Nobody else can do that for you.
That's so true. And it's all about self-awareness. Yeah. That's what it all comes down to. If you can just pay attention to your body, the things that you do, the things that you say, how you move, your own energy levels, all of that stuff.
Yep.
Then, life would be great. If we were all accountable for all those things for ourselves, if only, right? But I do want to switch gears. Yes. One of my biggest fears is public speaking. And I was snooping and, in some of your social media. Well, not really social media, more like LinkedIn. And you posted some tips regarding public speaking probably like 7 months ago or so. And it says tips for public speaking and sharing your narrative. I'm going to read it. Introduce yourself, not your title. Your title will change and doesn't define you. Your journey is what people want to hear about it. Practice hitting your key points in 30 seconds. Public speaking is a craft. You need to practice in order to get better. Find places and events to speak at. Example, church conferences, PTO meeting, friends' podcasts. Hi, hey friend. Social media. Identify 1 or 2 topics that you can speak knowledgeably about and comfortably about to any audience. And then the last quick piece, you said, you are enough, just go for it. Yeah. And that was in caps lock. And that means a lot to me because even though that I work in media and radio, when people ask me to host like galas or however you say it, or
we know.
Nobody knows, or anything major, and it's gonna be more than like 30 people there, I'm always like, oh no, why did you choose me? But I kept running from these opportunities and they kept knocking. So eventually I was like, I gotta start doing it. So how did you become so comfortable with public speaking? And I also want to thank you for sharing that because a lot of people that are in high places, they have the same anxiety about public speaking. Like it's a thing that people just don't talk about.
Well, I think I've always been an extrovert. Both my parents were in the Marine Corps, and so I moved every single year pretty much of my life. And so that was part of me like becoming a communicator to make friends as well.
Oh, okay.
And so that in turn, so I go into the cafeteria, hey, is anyone sitting here? I couldn't be timid or I would have no friends because that's how it is when you're a new kid and you go into a new school. Like kids are not always the nicest.
They are not. They're not.
But also I was in theater and choir. And so that too teaches you like to have the stage presence and to get out there and know like you might mess up a line, but you just keep going. And that was one thing that I really enjoyed was local theater and being in plays and musicals. And so I think I took some of that too and put my persona to say, Maria at home is comfortable and relaxed and I don't have to get all the words right. But on stage, I'm Maria for the corporate speaking engagement, or I'm Maria for the nonprofit, so I think it too also goes to what your audience is and feeling comfortable in that space. I actually speak better with more people than less people.
Can you give me that superpower, please?
I think for me,
pass it over.
The way that I write, and I have seen for a lot of people that it does feel like a superpower, but for me, a larger crowd, I can't just hone in on like you and I talking. To me, I'm like, okay, I saw her movement. I saw the pause in her voice. She's asking a question, like it's more direct. In a big crowd or a big audience, I can't even see everyone's emotions or interactions. And so I'm just going to go and I might pick one person in the audience that's just very invested. And they could be going, yeah, I can't wait till this is over. Wow, what's for lunch? But I'm going to pay attention to that positive face, right? Because when we do those things, we're always critiquing ourselves. So I would definitely say practice speaking wherever you can and try to just be confident because you're doing something that someone else didn't want to do, or someone saw enough in you to say, yes, I want her to host my gala or gala, depending on where you're from.
Where you from?
And then two, just like Toastmasters is a really good place because you can practice your public speaking. And like you said, you're in radio. And so every media outlet may not be for you. Maybe you like to speak, but you just want to be behind the scenes in a podcast. Or you like to speak and you're like, I love the masses. I only want to speak on big stages. Or you're like, I like 5-person roundtables. That's all I want to do. So you maybe find that balance of, what works for you, but also understanding that these are just people like you. And once I started to think about it that way, and I say, oh my gosh, that person is the vice president of Coca-Cola. I'm just going to shout that out. I haven't spoken at an event with the vice president of Coca-Cola.
Shout out.
Right? But we talk about these titles, right? And so I think sometimes that pressure of the title comes in our mind. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to get it right because do you know who this is? But do you know who you are? Like you're in this space as well. So that says a lot about you too. And
do
if
you
don't
know
wanna be
who
a
you
speaker-
are?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had
who
to
you are?
interrupt.
Yeah.
Do you know who you are?
Do you know
That's
who you are?
so
And
big.
when I started to think that way, and not in a boastful way, but a way to say, I've worked really hard to do these things, and I've been through a lot too, but I am enough. And I mean that to say, everyone is not going to have the same personality as you. Everyone's not even going to have the same speaking dialect. I may not be the best speaker for everything, but I'm going to find those components that are, and I'm going to walk into that space knowing that I was meant to be there.
I love that. That totally brings me into my next question, because I love one of the lines that you put. I mean, I love the whole post on LinkedIn. Let me just be honest here.
Thank you.
But one of the lines really stood out to me, and it says, introduce yourself, not your title. Your title will change and doesn't define you. Your journey is what people want to hear about. Can you please break that all the way down for people? Because I feel like a lot of people are so identified with their job or the amount of money they have, their title of some board or organization, or, you know, what they've accomplished in the past. And the list could go on and on and on. And little do we know, when we lose one of those titles, we feel like we've lost a part of ourselves. Right? So can you break down to us, like, why you, like, introduce yourself, not your title, like what that means to you?
Well, one, when the title is not yours, like you're working for a corporation, you're working for a business that is not your own, you never own that title anyway. That title is not you. We've seen the great layoff, right? And so you were a senior computer science engineer, I don't know, at Dell or something, right?
Yeah, something
and
prominent.
That title made you feel somewhere, because we're also taught to go into these great 9-to-5 roles and climb the ladder of corporate. That was instilled in a lot of our generation. And now that more people are coming out of that space, we're like, what? I raised all this money for you, or I did my blood, sweat, and equity work, and you're just gonna throw it to the side? So for me, I'm more connected to, I'm Maria Brown-Spence, and I got the big bubbly smile, and I'm Afro-Latina, and I'm a veteran, because those things will never change. So also identifying yourself. So I'll say, Maria, I'm an Army veteran. Oh, you're an Army veteran. I'm a veteran as well, too. And so then you already have built rapport off of something that you're connected to. Because you and I may not have the same title, but we might have a similar experience. And so even going into speaking engagements, or like you said, if you are at a space and you might have a name tag and things like that, I usually talk about what I'm passionate, or what brought me to this component. And sometimes I often won't wear a name tag just so that we can have a dialogue. And I've had people come up and say, oh, what is your name? I see you don't have a name tag on. Yeah, well, I'm Maria, and I'm here because I love to talk about mental health or social impact. And then now I've gotten a conversation started to not say, oh, I'm Maria, and you see here, I'm the director of social impact, and this is what I do. You have to dive a little bit deeper. And so that's a little ploy too, is don't wear the name tag if you don't have to.
Don't wear the name tag if you don't have to. Okay, so I lived in LA for like 9 years. And so the questions, how it goes in LA is like, what's your name? Oh, my name is Miles. Well, what do you do? Are you an actor, a singer, or a model, or da-da-da, whatever? I'm 5'2", okay? First of all, I'm 5'2". That's
You print, baby.
I'm not happy. I'm little here. But the whole point is, it's like, it was always about, like, what you do. Mm-hmm. It was as though everybody was always at events or in the room to see how that they could, like, climb some type of ladder or get themselves, like, escalate their life or elevate their life, I should say. And it just got so annoying after a time, because I'm from Texas, and that's not a common question that we typically ask fellow Texans. It's becoming that because all these people are moving here. But you understand, like, people that are, like, really from here, it's not about, it wasn't ever about that. It was just kind of about getting to know who you are as a person. So I am in, like, yoga training right now, and one of the biggest things that came up in my class was, my teacher was like, I hate it when people ask you, what do you do? And then one of the girls in class was like, it's just a normal nicety. They're just trying to, start a conversation with you. What do you think about the question, what do you do? Do you think it's that important?
I don't.
Okay.
I often sometimes don't know how to answer it, because especially here in Austin too, we don't wear just one hat either. So it's like, well, what do you do? What do you mean? In what capacity? Do you mean my 9-to-5? Do you mean my nonprofit? Do you mean the roles that I play as a family member? Like, what does that even mean? So sometimes, like, again, switching that question back to say, like, what brought you here? Or, okay, I saw, I always try to find something connected. Like, I like your tennis shoes, those sneakers. Where did you get those from? And then you're having a different dialogue. But I don't think it should be about what you do, because that can change. And I think too, society has put pressure on what they seem ideal for titles or things to do, that's where we feel like not enough, because we've listened to what the media says or what all of these self-help books show, and it's always best award-winning therapist with 10,000 degrees has said. It's like, but I may not have all of those things, but my knowledge is still valuable. So I don't agree with the what do you do, but yes, it is one of those things that we commonly ask. And I usually will say that, well, what do you mean what I do? Like, in what aspect? And then from there, they're like, oh, well, whatever you want to share. Like, so you kind of throw them off their guard a little bit, and you make it like jovial, right? And you're not like, well, what do you mean I do? And maybe you do mean it that way, depending on how they said it.
Right.
But I think that goes back to the energy, right? Because there are spaces sometimes, like with me being the only senior leader in my department of color, I will go into all white spaces or spaces where there aren't many faces, and it comes like, oh, so what do you do? Like kind of condescending nature, like, oh, what brought you here? Mm-hmm. Not like, oh, what do you do? Like, I'm so happy that we're in this same space of meetup group together. Mm-hmm. So sometimes there is a tone to it, and I think you just have to lean into that and see what someone's trying to say, and maybe you just give them the surface level, and then if they want to dive deeper, they do.
You check the temperature.
Yeah.
You check the temperature. I need to go to a networking event with you because I want to see all of this stuff. I need to see all of this.
I'm so exhausted after networking events sometimes, and I say that to, even with networking events, the who, the what, when, why, and like how, right? Like, how am I getting there? First of all, do I have to drive through traffic during rush hour? Why am I going? Am I going just so I can take a social media picture or say that I was at an event? Who's going to be there? Whose energy do I want to be around? So I also ask those questions, and it's not me thinking I'm too good for these spaces. It's me saying my energy is slim and scarce, and I can't just give that to everything. And because I am an extrovert, and I do have a big light that I bring, like this is me all the time when I'm out, like energy galore. But then I go home and I'm like, whew, I'm exhausted, because I had to do so much of that, because part of me that I know that I'm not going to change is I always want people to feel welcome in my space.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the stuff you're saying, I'm like, am I talking to myself? Because I feel the same way. Like, if I don't feel like I can be 100% me going into an event, like meaning providing that energy and holding space for others, I won't go. Yeah. I'd rather stay at home, because I just feel like if you're going to get 30% of me, that's not okay. And
when you love being with yourself, like home is a great place to be. Like, I don't have to worry about parking. I have all the snacks. I got the best shows. I'm comfortable. I don't have to worry about none of that. But when I go out, I want to make sure that I'm not regretting and say, oh, I could have been at home in my bonnet. And I said bonnet a few times because I do love a good bonnet. But I don't have to worry about any of that. And I want to make sure that the space that I'm in, I'm going to go home feeling fulfilled as well, because I'm leaving the house fulfilled.
Yeah. Based on what we were talking about with like titles and stuff like that, it's kind of hard these days because my feelings are the same as yours. Meaning like you don't need to know what everybody does. Sometimes I get into conversations with people that I don't know, right? Just randomly being out and about. We're Geminis. And I let them spill all of their tea, and then I deflect. I'm good at just being like, no, what about your family? What about where you're from? And da-da-da. And then by the time the check comes or the night's over, one of my friends will be like, yeah, she does. They'll be like, what does she do? And they'll be like, yeah, she does da-da-da-da. She's a radio host, whatever. And the person will be like, wait, what? We didn't even talk about that. And I'm like, well, too late. Gotta go now. Ciao.
You might get a part 2 or you may not.
You might not get a part 2, because sometimes I really just like actively listening to people. But what I was going to say is that it's kind of hard these days to not be concerned with titles, because when you look at a person's social media profile, that's all we have is titles. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, regardless or not, if it really matters or it should matter, that's how our lives are laid out. That's how it's like the bullet points to who you are is on your social media profile.
Social media is what you would have called back in the day keeping up with the Joneses. You could see when the neighbor drove up in the driveway with the new car, like, oh, somebody got a raise or a promotion.
Calvin's got a job.
But social media took that to like level 12,000.
Right.
To where if you're not there, are you even real? Like, what do you do? And I have a love-hate relationship. I'm always on, people say, but you're always on social media. I post and then I dip out.
Oh my God, we're the same person.
It's like,
I do that too.
And sometimes I love seeing the comments, and I'm like, I read them all and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love y'all too, and this is amazing. And then sometimes I just don't have the energy to reply to all the things. And it's not that I don't appreciate it. It's just like, for me to not go through what they call the doom scroll either, of like, wow, that's nice. Oh, now I got to get to work because I've wasted too much time, or that person, and so then we're always watching it. We couldn't do that before social media existed. You knew when you would go to school, someone had the new Christmas presents. You're like, okay, I see you. And then it died down a little bit, right? You didn't have all the outfits you could wear every day of the week on social media anyway. And so that's where I would say with that, the titles is like, using those boundaries on social media. Maybe it is you posting, because in a lot of the spaces that we're in, especially like you said, growing your podcast and media, me wanting to grow my business and elevate my corporate profile, we have to do that because that's the only way people will find out about us as well. And so I think it takes that time to say, I'm going to post and then I'm going to leave it here. Or I might have one day where I reply to all my comments and that's all I do for the week. Or if I feel like someone's profile is making me feel too anxious, because let's be real, the spirit of competition can motivate you as well. I'll say, I'm going to go ahead and mute that person right now because I can't. It's not like I don't care. I just got to self-preserve myself because I know that I want to do more as well. And so I would say social media. Oh, social media.
Social media. And I also have a love-hate relationship, and I do the same exact thing as you. I literally post and I go ghost. That's what I do. Posting and ghosting. That's what I do. And I remember one of my childhood friends one time, we went to Vegas or something, and we got back to the house where I lived in California, and she was like, you haven't liked any of my pictures, da-da-da. So I was in the other room, she was in the living room, and I'm just hard everything. I said, is that good enough? Yeah. Because I gave you the in-person validation. Why do you need it for social media? Yeah. I've already given you the validation in person.
That's it.
Why do I have to go there too? Why do I have to be in this virtual world and in this reality world? Like,
or knowing everything isn't for you in social media. My best friend will tell you, she lives in Dallas. I was like, oh, I saw you were out. You went with friends to dinner. She's like, girl, you don't even live here. I'm like, I know, but I still want to be included. I'm why? So even that. Or you're like, oh, you back? Like, girl, I've been back for 2 weeks. That was an old post. So, like, the optics that we put for social media aren't even real half the time.
They're
like,
fake. Fake.
I haven't been overseas in 6 years. But we take so much of that to be true. And I think the level of vulnerability that I want to have and transparency is a lot on social media. And I do show some of those components, but I also know that at the same time, everyone doesn't need to have that same access to you. And sometimes it's okay not to show the world what you're doing. As long as you feel, again, fulfilled in what you're doing, it doesn't matter what the outside voices say.
And that's crazy that you say that, because for me, I've done more than I've done in probably like the last 4 months and this last month, and I haven't posted at all. Yeah. I've gone to events like every weekend or did something. I didn't post anything. And in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, I'm supposed to post that. Like, nobody sees it. Then did it have and I'm like, no, I know who I am. I was there. I have pictures. Those are for me. If I choose to post them at a later date, that's okay. And I want to be present when I am at places. So I might pull out my phone for a second and just want to remember that in my phone. But I have so many memories that have not been put on social media just because I want to keep them for myself and preserve a part of me, because everybody, like you said earlier, everybody doesn't deserve access.
That's definitely a Gemini thing as well. Like, I love to capture the moments. And I started to ask permission as well, too, when I'm out, like, especially if it's a celebration for something I'm excited, like, to get this content or whatnot. Hey, does anybody not want to be on social media? And for different reasons, people say no. And I don't ask them why. Like, why don't you? I'll say, okay, well, I'm getting ready to record. Here we go. Now, if we're in a big setting like a conference or something, of course, I can't ask everyone. But if I am in a group of people, I usually try to say, do you want to be in this? Or, hey, I'm not posting this. This is just for me, because that's part of the boundary setting. And sometimes you just don't want to be on social media. And that should be okay, too. But I love the memory collection as well, because when you are going through a tough time, you can always look back at the video. It's something that can motivate you to say, wow, I remember when I was at the gym 5 days a week and now I'm not.
And sometimes it's like, why they got to pull up the memories from 5 years ago?
I'm just
glad. Facebook take out all these
I'm just glad we didn't have
memories.
Instagram when the 2006 and
Me
up.
too.
Like,
Me too. Because it was, I don't want to see all of that.
No,
I don't
I
need
don't.
to see all of that.
No.
I don't need to see all of that at all. But I mean, I love the fact that we're talking about, like social media in general, because I do feel a lot of people struggle with social media just in general. How much should they be on it? How much time should they be spending? And we all have an aunt that will take unflattering pictures of you, put it on their Facebook page, and then tag you.
and now I gotta untag.
Now I
you.
gotta untag, and I don't want to untag. So I wish everybody asked, just like you. Hey, do you want to be on social media today?
Yeah.
Because some days my edges aren't laid for that, or I don't think I got enough sleep, or something
or maybe
like that.
I wasn't supposed to work from home
Right.
over here in Mexico.
Right, yeah, and
So,
they don't know
like,
that.
no, right,
I'm in
yeah.
London right now. Everybody doesn't need to know that. So I totally get that. But in a world of social media, how do you stay focused on what you have going on without letting what other people are doing affect you?
I'm going to mute it. If there's something on social media that I feel doesn't make me feel good, I'm going to remove it from that space at least. On social media too, like I try to post positive things, and sometimes I'll come across some videos like, ooh, that's hitting hard, and that's right, but that's not the energy I want today as well. So I think it's partly of like curating what you need as well, but social media is just one of those things. Like I don't think we'll ever find the rhyme and reason to it, and we are seeing more people take that hiatus of social media to say, I'm not posting, or like you said, I'm going to go ghost for a little bit, because we are starting to see how social media impacts us in a negative way. But it's also a really good tool to get connected. Like I've met friends on social media that I met years ago and we're still friends, or I've been able to, with sharing more of my story, been able to connect with other individuals that want to share. And so I think that voice is needed as well, but it's just finding that balance.
Yeah, it's an addiction for a lot of people too. Like I remember before when I was, dating and things like that, of that nature.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I would look at people's phones and be like, pull up your screen time on, like, I want to see your screen time on
I
the app.
tried that. Nope.
Yeah, and a guy was like, are you serious? You want to see my screen time on Instagram or Facebook? I said, yeah, 7 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I was like, are you an influencer? He was like, no. I said, if you had a minimum wage job and you were on social media for 7 hours a day, you could, that's your full-time job. Yeah. Like you would be fine if you were getting paid hourly, but you're not. So you're wasting that time by just, like you said earlier, being on the doom scroll.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do people break out of that? Because when we're bored now, that's the first thing we go back to, and we don't know how to shift it and be like, well, maybe I should be reading a book instead. Like every time I get that urge, maybe I should go read a book, or I should go for a walk, or I should go to the gym.
I try to remove social media from my phone for that reason. I'm like, oh, okay, let me just put it back. So like I've tried some of those things, but what I have been really good at now is by a certain time at night, I turn off the phone.
I love that.
D&D, or I will legit turn the full phone off, because I hope no one's calling me. Like if there's something going on, please call my emergency contact. But I'll put my phone off and charge it and not get back on it. Or I'll put my phone in another room, and I know I'll have like back-to-back meetings or things that I'm working on, so that I can't just reach over and get it on that end. So for me, it's at least taking that time in the evening to say no more social media, lights out for you too. So I think you just have to figure out what works best for you. If you feel like it's getting really negative for you and you're like, gosh, I feel really terrible with social media makes me feel like I'm not doing enough, then maybe you try to post more of your happy moments on social media that you may get some comments and likes for, because that'll bring you a little bit joy. Or you watch little funny dog memes if you need,
whatever you need to
right?
watch. Yeah.
Or maybe you're using it for research. So you could also use social media to say, like, I want to see what other people are doing with their podcast, so I'm going to take some time this week to just scroll through other people's podcasts. Or I want to see what, hashtag is under tech, because that's the sector I want to get in. Let me see if any buzzwords are coming up. So you can also use social media for other things, just not like endless scrolling. And I will do that. Like for me, grief and loss is my jam. Like I'm the one person who's just like the grief whisperer, like talk to me about all the things grief. And I will look at the hashtag grief and say, oh, I'm seeing a lot of people are struggling with this, or we have a pregnancy and infant loss support group, and these women have just lost children. Let me send them if they're interested. And so you can also make connections that way as well. Or if you're going to a new city, you can start to prepare your itinerary to say #Austin, and you can find things to do on that way. So it's always not negative, but just find a time just find a time capacity that works for you, and mine is turning it off in the evening.
I love that. You're really intentional about the way that you use it. It's a tool for you.
Yeah.
For some people, it's a lifestyle.
Because it's not real life.
It's an everyday, all day, this is what's real situation. I don't know how many times, people will ask me, like, where'd you just go? Where did you come back from? And I'm like you said earlier, that was 2 weeks ago, or that was a month ago, or that was whatever. I remember for a time period, I would just post when I traveled just to see how people would react to me. It was an experience for me. But every time I would see people, where are you going next?
Yeah.
Because I only allow them to see 10% of my life.
Yeah.
And based on that 10%, they think that is my life.
Yes. It's funny how that happens, right? Like even with the things I share. So if you go to my page, I do talk a lot about grief or share some of the experiences. There's a lot of things I don't share that should be shared of how difficult that situation was. But I also don't want people to feel triggered from what I'm sharing. And so I think we see that too on social media, that some people don't have the same, not morals or whatnot, but like some people just post and you're like, oh my gosh, why did they post them getting hit by that car? Or, oh my gosh, that just happened. And so those things too, like there are certain platforms on Instagram that's all they post is the negative stuff. And when it comes, I'm like, get that out of here. Like, I do not want that. But I'm also like, some of these memories that I have or experiences are meant to be shared in a setting where people want to hear them. So if you are like talking about grief and it's a mental health conference, that's a great place to share it. If someone is like, we want to know what cancer looked like for you. Well, here's what this looked like. Here are the videos. Here are the recaps. So it's also too, like you said, curating what you want people to see, but also still protecting that intellectual property of yours. Like this is my knowledge and these are my experiences. You don't get access to this unless we're in that space. But I think that we're just going to have to figure out that balance with social media because it's not going anywhere. But like you said, it can be a really powerful tool.
It can be a really powerful tool, but it's just at the same time, it's just like you said, it's like two different things, bonuses, and then there's just downfalls of like being on social media and trying to figure it out. So you wear a lot of hats. You're in a lot of different spaces, a lot of different groups. I mean, I've seen you in different spaces since I've been here in 2016. What does success look like to you? Because I feel like most people assume success means things and, it means, titles and, whatever. Like the typical version of success that most humans feel like. I feel like it's peace, happiness, and freedom. I call it being happy, whole, and complete. Yeah. So what does it look like for you?
Fulfilled family. For everything goes, like I'm very invested in my family. Like I love on my family. And so for me, as long as my family is good, I'm good. But I also like to know that what I'm doing is exciting for me. So like I said, I had this time in my life of where grief was just consuming me and I wasn't excelling in my career. I wasn't in extracurricular activities. And so people are like, wow, you're doing all of this now. It's like, because I didn't do it then. Because I also didn't have that worth within myself to say that I was worthy for these things.
Worth within myself to say that I was worthy for these things. Did you guys hear that? Because I did.
And so now I'm like on level 10 of doing all the things that I didn't do or didn't believe in myself to do.
That's so dope.
Yeah. And so I said the things that bring me joy, that truly is the fulfilled life. Like I've never been big on material things. They're just nice to have. It's pretty.
Yeah, I like them too.
It's not important to me in that capacity. I like to be able to have financial resources that allow for me to say, hey, I'm going to go take a last minute trip to go see family, or hey, family, you want to come on this trip with me? Like, that is important to me because I don't care what anybody says when they say, oh, money doesn't solve everything, but it sure does help a little bit.
Oh, so, it does make life a little bit more comfortable. It gives you some freedom.
So as long as I'm comfortable in a space where I'm able to financially have my means and I'm still holding my integrity together, that is important because like they say, again, all money isn't good money. And so just because I'm having a financial lift that could help me in other things, if I feel like a bad person after, or I feel like I'm draining myself out and I have to work 14 hours for this financial income, then that's not important to me, because I will choose time over anything.
Oh, I
and
love
that is important to me. And even with, like, I have a nonprofit that I'm growing and I love, but I started that nonprofit less than 1 year after my boyfriend passed from cancer. So there's all these things I want to do, but I also have to say I'm still going through my healing journey, and it doesn't have to happen overnight. And so I think it also, too, success is understanding that this is not Instagram. You create a 30-second time lapse and wow, you built a house. Like, that is not how life works. And it's okay to take that time, and it's okay to be honest with people to say, hey, some things shifted and it's not going to happen that way. Or like you said, I'm not going to post and you just don't know. And those that do know, they need to know.
Oh. So many gems. I could just snap all day with you, and I could talk all day with you, because it's 4 of us here, right? Hello, everybody. But this has been an amazing conversation. I heart you, because I feel like I'm listening to the things that go on in my little head. But how can people keep up with you and support you in your journey?
Yes. So like I said, grief, if you are looking for resources to help you process your bereavement journey, Hearts to Heal, Hearts2 Heal on Instagram, and hearts2heal.org on our website. So that's my nonprofit that really focuses on supporting people in their bereavement journey, which came from my experiences of navigating grief and loss after 2 loved ones passed from cancer. I have a corporate hat as well. So I do work in social impact, specifically right now in the tech sector, of helping people enter into tech or STEM roles. So if you do need a little help with professional development, you're looking for mock interviews or resume development, I can support you with that and find resources. Maria Brown-Spence on LinkedIn, and then Curly Mosaic on Instagram, which everyone's like, where did that name come from? Like, I had curly hair like all my life. I told you earlier, like, I had curly hair before it was cool, and I used to get picked on, and there were no products for curly hair. And then Mosaic, because a mosaic is a lot of bit of things that make one beautiful picture. And I feel like the things that have happened in my life, all of those experiences, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, made me who I am. So you can find me on Instagram at Curly Mosaic. And if I don't reply to your comment, charge it to my head and not my heart, like we talked about. It's set in social media boundaries as well. But this was wonderful. I'm glad that we could finally reconnect after all these years.
Thank you so much, Maria Brown-Spence. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, what a feeling. It's more to a story when you count up who you dealing with. Losing's not an option, a subject or a predicate. They say the sky's the limit. Yes, I'm busting through the ceiling.